What do you get when you combine the modern XCOM with anime weebs? I'm thinking specifically like the anime Claymore with stylized cool girls with swords and kind of desaturated monochromatic color scheme with the original Matrix and the cool outfit factor. I mean, look, they've even got to download a DLC of the Dress to Kill cosmetics pack. That's right. Today, in comparing games that are similar to Battle Brothers, we've got Othercide, a stylized, edgy, atmospheric, turn-based tactical strategy game with frustrating and mediocre combat mechanics. I might be a little hyperbolic there, but I don't want to take too much of a shit on the game. But when you look at the Steam reviews, it's got very, very high, right? It's very positive with all reviews overall, which kind of surprised me because I played it for a while. It wasn't my cup of tea, and I kind of just let it linger in my Steam library. And I thought, it's been a while. I'll come back, revisit it, and maybe my attitude will change. Spoiler: it did not. It's interesting. It's neat. It's got a lot of unique game mechanics that I kind of like. But the overall experience for me, at least, was meh. So on the other side, you have, sexy, cool anime girls in a kind of a black and white with streaks of red environment. You've got the Blade Master, who's got the big sword, does lots of damage, but she's kind of fragile. You've got the Soul Slinger, who's got two pistols, so does decent damage against unarmored opponents, but not against armored ones, and can do support things to help out her team. And then I think it's Shield Bearer, who does medium damage, but can obviously tank damage, but also disrupt the enemy with timing. And that's one of the things that's kind of unique. If you look on the bottom of the screen on this gameplay here, you'll see there's like a line. I think it's called what do they call it? Dynamic timeline or something. They give it a neat title, but realistically, it just shows the order of events that go on in combat. And basically, your characters have 100 action points. And if you just use 50 of them, which is enough to move a little bit and attack once, when you're done with your action, you reset in the middle of that time bar. People on the left, everything shifts to the left as you act, so you go back to the middle so you can act pretty quickly over and over again with small actions. Or if you want to use more than 50 time units, up to 100, it's called burst, and then you can do a lot more, but then you reset all the way to the right at 100, and it takes longer for you to act again. So it's kind of interesting, especially because certain abilities can either speed you up or slow you down. And the same with the enemies. Some enemies, they naturally, when they move, they reset at, I think there's a scavenger, which is a little fast guy, right? He moves, he'll attack, and then he resets at 38. So it's pretty quick. He can move and attack twice before your characters do if you don't time it right. Whereas some of the bigger, heavier, tankier guys, they might move and then they reset all the way back at 80. And then theoretically you could act twice. Each of your characters could act twice before they do. So it's an interesting mechanic. It does make you think about when do you burst and do lots of actions and recover for a while, and when do you do little normal actions and time the opponents. The problem is the enemies, they spawn kind of like the new XCOM games, right? You're moving along, you're doing fine. You move that last guy up, and then it spawns a whole enemy squad, and they move around, start acting. In this game, you'll be moving, you'll kill an enemy, you're done, you think, okay, I've cleared it out, I'm ready to go next turn, and then all of a sudden, new enemies will appear and start spawning. You don't have a lot of time to react to them. And that gets a little frustrating because as a turn-based tactical game, you're trying to think almost like a chess game where you want to see the rules and know what's going on so you can make the best decisions. And when random events pop up, you have no way of predicting. It gets frustrating because there's not much you can do about it. The other interesting thing about this game is normally when you play these kind of games, there's a gradient. Is it a role-playing game where you don't expect to lose anybody? Like the new XCOM game where you might lose one or two people early on, but later on in the game, your team is pretty small and pretty elite, and losing someone permanently is a major blow. Or is it like the previous game I reviewed, Xenonauts, or the original XCOM, people die all the time, and it's not a big deal unless you lose a lot of people. In this game, as your characters get injured, they can't heal. There is no healing mechanic in the game, except to sacrifice another, they call them daughters, I think, another daughter of equal or higher rank. And when you sacrifice one daughter, it heals up the other one. And depending on what class that sacrificed daughter is, she gives certain abilities and bonuses to the surviving daughter. The surviving daughter takes a piece of that sacrificed daughter and becomes more powerful. It's a unique mechanic. It forces you to have losses. And I actually kind of like that because I like it's a little frustrating because you grow attached to your characters, right? But it's a kind of a grim, dark, eerie world. And having them sacrifice themselves to boost up others is a good mechanic. It makes you think, and it makes you accept loss no matter what. Obviously, you're still trying to avoid getting injured in combat, but it's inevitable. And while your characters have normal actions that take time units, they have some more powerful abilities that they sacrifice health for. 5% of their health, 10% of their health to use these much more powerful abilities. So again, you're forced at times to use these things to protect your other, especially like the shield bearer. Maybe she could become more tanky and protect her sisters, but she takes damage instead. The soul slinger can use her ability. She sacrifices life, and she negates the first attack of an enemy that hits one of her sisters, and then she deals damage in return as well. So, yeah, I kind of like those mechanics. Another interesting thing is I guess we'll call them traits. As your people level up, like the newer XCOM game, you pick between two different skill abilities you level up. You don't pick weapons or anything. It's just as they level up, they get skills based on their class. But depending on what they do in each mission, they pick up traits, usually bonuses, but sometimes negatives, based on their performance. So I kind of like that too, as opposed to picking them so you can try to game out and I guess game the system or build super characters. It's random, just like it would be in real life. So you can look here at all these different skills and abilities. So if you look here at the wiki, here's just a small sampling of some of the abilities. You've got pensive, so experience gain minus 10%. You fail to protect a bright soul. There's different mission types. You kill the enemy, you escort a bright soul, kind of a helpless, innocent creature, escort them through the level, protect them, and get them out. If you fail to protect them, there's a 40% chance you'll get this perk trait if you're level 1 to 5. Precise, you get bonus critical damage of 25%. There's a 20% chance you'll get this if you're level 11 to 15 and you deal a high number of critical hits during the mission. Prodigy, you get a bonus 10% chance to crit. You have a 50% chance of getting this trait if you're level 6 to 10 and you kill the most foes while of lower level than other units during the mission, and there are no other prodigy in the team. There's a whole giant list of these, and these perks make a huge difference when it comes to trying to skill up and level up your characters, make them more powerful, because some daughters will get a lot of these and some won't, and because you have to sacrifice them and they they die inevitably. You're trying to protect the ones that get these traits. And there are certain ways to resurrect some of the fallen ones. So you try to find which ones have the most traits, have gained these random events, and you really try to baby them and grow them and resurrect them, and you sacrifice the other ones. So it's kind of an interesting mechanic. One of the things I don't necessarily like, the game has a roguelite. I'm not sure. I don't know which one specifically counts, and I don't care to look it up. But ultimately, the game is very difficult the first time you run through, right? And then there's different chapters, and at the end of the chapter, there's a big boss you have to fight. And the first time you go through, you're probably not going to do it. And part of it's because, yeah, you haven't figured out how the game mechanics work, and it takes a while to learn and to get good at them. Second problem is the big bosses and some of the other monsters have weird mechanics as well. And it takes a while to figure out their different phases and how do you beat them and what their weaknesses is and what the proper gameplay is. But the third part is you need to go through multiple times and unlock certain abilities. So every time you run through a game, you gain these shards. And then based off of your gameplay performance, just like the traits, if you do certain things, you'll unlock these different bonuses. And then you can spend the shards to make your next run easier. So if you look here, corroded scissors. If you spend 30 of your shards during the run through, you can resurrect one of your fallen daughters. Preserved heart. All your daughters gain 15% damage to cultists. All your daughters gain 15% damage to nightmare creatures. So some of them make them tougher, might give them more action points. There's a whole, again, you can look on this left here. There's a very large list of bonuses. And every time you play through, you get more and more of these abilities. Your daughters, when you restart, the daughters from the previous run are all dead in the graveyard. But you can start resurrecting them. And now you can start with stronger daughters, and when you get to the big boss at the end, you have even more strong daughters to run through it. So it's frustrating because I like the idea that I can win on the very first run if I know what I'm doing and I'm good enough. But it's also nice that maybe players that aren't as good tactically, and the more they can play through multiple times, get stronger and stronger and stronger, and then they can eventually win it. It's not the gameplay mechanic I particularly enjoy, but it's there as an option. I mentioned some of the edgy, kind of dark atmosphere of the game. There's the mother who's sending the daughters out to free. In the first chapter, you're freeing this child. Or I don't know if it's a child you're trying to save or the boss is doing bad things to a child. It's kind of ambiguous and clear. But let's just listen to a little bit of it.
Question. The plague will kill us all. Each cut brings us closer to the cure.
They spoke lies, little one.
Too little to fight. They cut me because I could not die.
We will fight for you. Release this memory to me.
The veil grows weaker. His power stronger. What new horrors must we face?
Another thing I didn't like necessarily, the monochromatic color scheme was kind of neat at first, but over time, map after map, it all just kind of blurred together, and it was not visually interesting after a while. And looking at some of these comments, I figured, hey, it has a high rating on Steam. Let's look and see what some of the comments are. You can see in the lower right here, it says, it's great. This guy played 120 hours. But he says lots of reused maps and such. That's true. Combats, he says it's very replayable. But I don't think I would agree with that. I would say that the maps are reused a lot. The graphics get boring after a while. The enemies are not that varied. There's only a handful. And you know what? I would say maybe it gets better as you go along, but I've put in quite a few hours now, and it's just the same thing over and over and over again. Let's look at some other comments. This one up here in the upper right, this guy's saying it's great. Turn-based strategy with roguelike. I mean, that's correct. You die a lot, and you come back wiser and stronger each time. Yes, I mean, you have to just keep smashing your head into that wall until eventually it's strong enough that you can break through. But you can see a lot of the ones I was looking through, this guy has 9 hours. Yeah, at first, when you play it for a few hours, it looks neat. It's atmospheric. It's neat. It's got, interesting abilities and movement, and the enemies seem fresh. But after you get into that 20 or 30 hours of play, it starts getting repetitive and sameish, and it's not as interesting. Again, at least in my opinion. Well, I would not recommend this game. It's kind of funny because originally I was thinking about, hey, I'm going to look at games that are similar to Battle Brothers I recommend. And then the more I thought about it, it's like, I should probably look at games that are similar that I wouldn't recommend so people don't accidentally buy them. So, look, tactically, the battles take longer than Battle Brothers in general. They're not as tactically satisfying. They're more frustrating. There is more variety in mission types, which keeps things fresh a little bit, but there's not that many mission types. And again, the enemies are sameish, frustrating, gimmicky. I just don't like it very much. The graphics and sound, but the characters say when you click on them and stuff, at first it's interesting, but gradually it just gets repetitive and not interesting, and it becomes bothersome, I guess. It's just, it wears on you. And there's a couple places like in the game mechanics where, I think I'll put a little image up here, there's some weird GUI interface things, that just quality of life things that make it a little difficult to navigate and move around that are kind of frustrating. Like if you look here, we've got Peace here, the shield bearer. You can see her skills over there, and you can assign little upgrades to them that you recover from enemies, right? So her lunge does extra damage because she's with the departure thing. But if I click on the stats or other things, it won't go to them. And I can't go to her other abilities right away. I have to go back out. I can't select other characters either. I have to go back out to the main menu, look at the other ones, select them individually. It just slows things down and makes it tedious. It's a minor point, but little things like that add up and just kind of make the game frustrating. Again, I hope other developers of similar types of games take note. Like I mentioned at the beginning, there are a couple mechanics I do kind of like in this that I hope I see added into more games in the future. But overall, this is no for me. If you like the roguelite, kind of slowly building and repeating over and over again, maybe you'll get more out of it. It's borderline for me, and that kind of gameplay style typically pushes me into the no camp, but yeah, maybe different for you. Hope you enjoyed the review. Let me know what you think. If you've played Othercide, give me your comments. What am I missing? And we'll see what's next.